Hello everyone and welcome to this week of ASAC speaker session. My name is Luay Malahmi. I'm the General Manager of the School of Advanced Computing at Luminous Education. We will start now with basically, let me just pull up the slides. We're waiting for more attendees to come. Currently we have around 44 people. Welcome on board. Today we have a special guest with us, Mr. Mitch Robertson. He's the VP of Business Development and Growth at Code Fellows, our great education partners. Mitch, can you turn on your camera and say hello to everyone? Can unmute yourself as well? Perfect. Hi, Mitch.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Glad to be with you.
Glad to have you as well, and thank you for making the time. I know it's early at 6 a.m. around at your time. We appreciate you being with us at this time.
Yes, it's a pleasure, my pleasure as well, and nothing that a good cup of coffee won't fix in the early mornings here.
Awesome. Perfect. So before I start introducing Mitch to everyone, we'll go a couple of things regarding the agenda. We'll have like a 5 minutes now already, just introduction. Mitch will be taking us through his awesome topic that's related to remote working, the future of careers and the tech world. And then we'll have some Q&A from everyone during the last 30 minutes. So a few rules just before we start. Sit in comfort place, quiet place, sit in a comfortable and quiet place, to make the most out of the session. We will open the floor for questions during the Q&A session. So there's a Q&A part in the webinar. If you go down, just write your questions there. Also, please provide your inputs to our questions. We'll ask you some polls maybe at the beginning now and during the Q&A part. And we appreciate if you can respond to the end of the webinar survey so we can keep improving our sessions. So if I want just to know the type of people that we have today with us. So if you can just at the chat part of the webinar, just type your major if you are a student at LTUC. What do you study with us? So if you're a student at LTUC or ASAC, just let us know what do you study. Are you software engineering? Are you ASAC? Interesting. So we have a lot of people from ASAC. So maybe we can start with the polls. So I want to ask, please, Safe to put some polls for everyone. We start with the first poll. So why did you decide to join this event today? Can you tell us basically? Is it for knowledge building? Is it for topic, speaker, or did your boss or instructor made you to come and watch us? Okay, so the majority is for knowledge building. Thank you for that. The second question that's related to what we do, Safe, if you can also put the question. The question is, would you be interested to work remotely? Interesting. So we have 91% said yes. And the last question, is, do you think you have the right skills to work remotely? Give it a couple of more seconds. Interesting. So we have 59% said yes, 7% said no, and 35% they can't tell if they have the right skills to work remotely. So that's actually a very interesting feedback from you to start to kick off this discussion. And Mitch, I wanna, just before you start, I wanna tell our audience a little bit about you. So Mitch is as I said, he's the Vice President of Business Development at Codefellows. He brings over 20 years of experience in industries that span non-for-profit, retail, technology, oil and gas, energy, aeronautics, and education to his role as a VP of Business Development and Growth at Codefellows. Throughout his career in executive leadership, he has been responsible for finance, operations, sales, strategy, marketing, and leadership, where he has successfully navigated the challenge of launching and maintaining a new, highly effective education model in a quickly changing tech industry. Mitchell is passionate about preparing forward-thinking professionals with the training and agility to take on current and future challenges in leadership and technology. As an executive, Mitch has worked across several markets, including United States, Middle East, Germany, Canada, Mexico, Africa, and Europe, where he has been able to build sustainable businesses from startups to enterprise organizations. He has successfully launched and scaled businesses that bring innovation, economic growth, and sustainable business to communities across the world. Mitch, we're so happy to have you here. There's no better person that I can think of to talk about this topic, and we're super excited to kick off this discussion. So welcome on board again, and I will leave you to start the topic with our audience.
Perfect. Thank you, Luai. It's my pleasure to be with you all again this afternoon. I'm excited about this topic, as Luai has mentioned, and I'm excited to share with you what is happening in this space and what's impacting it as we look into the future. So with that, let me share my screen, and I'll get started on this presentation. 1 second. Okay, so you should see my screen now, and with that, I'll kick into it. So ultimately, I think that it's important for us all to evaluate what is happening in the landscape of remote work, in particular as it pertains to today. Obviously, remote work is on all of our minds as we look at what the impact of COVID-19 has brought about, how much people are thinking about the ability to both work remote and learn remote is becoming much more critical in our economies globally. And you're seeing that just begin to grow in lots of trends and lots of ways. And so we in some ways have been as a world caught a bit off guard by the ability to stay functional and operational on a time when something like COVID-19 hits all of our lives. And so you see a lot of companies, including our own, having to make quick pivots and quick switches to be able to work and function remotely and still provide the same level of service and quality that they're known for. Proud to say that organizations like Luminous and Codefellows and others have really made the switch well. We're seeing lots of benefit from that. And I think this is just one small glimpse into what companies have begun to consider as we look into the future and see what where this takes us. And so with that, I want to cover really these 5 things. Why it's essential to consider remote work. And why remote working is going to be essential even more so into the future. What are the technologies and tools that are transforming how we work and how effectively we might work remotely. Third, probably the most important for most of you, is how to be an effective remote worker. What that looks like, and how do you shine and stand above? How do you stay competitive? How do you ensure that your career is going to be able to be sustainable long-term remotely as you choose that as a career path? I, for one, have been in careers most of my life that require me to be remote, and it's a great gift for me. And as we have seen technology progress, gosh, it's been really exciting for me to be able to do things like I'm doing today, share a story, present, and talk to a group of individuals. Clearly 10 hours in difference in time zones and across our globe that makes it impactful in ways that it was not 10 years ago even. Next is what are the trends happening in what technologies are impacting that? And then finally, ultimately, who's hiring? Who's looking for remote work? And in particular, sectors or what markets are looking for individuals to do remote work? Why is it essential? Recently, a survey was published by an organization called the Global Workplace Analytics in partnership with another organization called Flex Jobs. They did this long research studying what remote work had done over the past decade. And as they looked into this past decade, what they've seen is that there's been a 159% increase in the number of individuals working remotely. Companies have already begun to adopt this over the past decade, and seeing that growth, most of the predictions now are saying that by 2028, more than half of the population of the world will be in some form or fashion working remotely. So if you haven't considered remote work, know that remote work will be a part of our future, whether that's in full or where we're always remote and we're working from parts of the regions of the world for companies across the globe, or whether that's much like myself, where I have an office that I go to sometimes, but most of the time I'm working remotely. That is the future of why it's essential. Companies are beginning to consider it more and more. And as the technologies begin to grow and develop and improve, what you're finding is that employees, people like ourselves that are looking for work, are being much more picky about that work and really want and desire this aspect of life, the ability to work remote when necessary, to continue to stay productive, but also to continue to grow in their career. So let's look at a few elements. I'm going to talk about 8 different areas that make this essential today with you all, and hopefully you'll find it insightful. So health and safety, first and foremost, I would be remiss if I didn't mention this topic. Health and safety, the ability to work remote not only provides us the ability to be productive while we are facing things like this pandemic that's going on, but it also allows us to remain safe. Remote work allows us to work and stay connected and stay productive, to learn and grow and to develop while something like COVID-19 is impacting us all, and stay safe in that process. It also, dispersed workers, it has been proven, lots of studies going on, that dispersed workers not only have the ability to remain safe in times of outbreaks like COVID-19, but even in simple times where there's a cold or a cough or an allergy or an outbreak that would normally make you stay home and not being productive, you're able to continue to produce and continue to work, which most people want to do while they're sick. And so remote work allows for that as well. And then last, lots of studies have gone into this. One of the major ways that this produces safety is that commuting hours, the hours of the day where individuals are driving to and from, taking public transit, they have studies across the globe show that that is the highest rate of traffic accidents and theft. And so it's another way that you're able to stay and work and be productive and not have to navigate the congestion and the traffic in the mornings, which can produce accidents and delays as well. Next topic on my list, just hopping over, is diversity and inclusion. If you pay any attention to what's happening across the globe on this topic, it has been a hot topic and a buzzword for a long time. At Codefellows, we pride ourselves on trying to make sure that we are being a diverse organization ourselves. But what that means for us is that we want to bring diversity of thought, diversity of background, diversity of gender and race for sure. But ultimately, we want individuals who think differently to impact the products that we are building, the services that we are providing, because we believe we'll be a better organization. And again, many studies have gone into this. The more diverse your team is, the more effective and more productive it is. And so companies are beginning to recognize that one of the ways to build more diverse and inclusive teams is through remote work. You can reach individuals in lots of markets around the world. You're not confined to your local geography and hiring practices. You are actually able to go beyond that. The next topic is work-life balance. Work-life balance is clearly something on all of our minds. Often, how do I both enjoy my life, enjoy what I do, but also have a productive, meaningful career that can pay the bills, that can provide for the things that I want in life, and do those things in conjunction. Many times in our history, this seems like a hard thing to do. Most people run the gamut of, I'm going to work really hard and not have a life for many years, and then hopefully at the end of that time, I'll be able to enjoy life. Well, time and again, this is showing that this is not healthy, it's not productive, and it's also producing tons of stress. So work-life balance is becoming much more crucial. And so through the power of remote work, you can virtually work anywhere. Where do you want to live? What are your hobbies and your interests and desires? Many of the reasons that I ended up in Seattle, Washington, where I'm based now, is because I fell in love with the city. And had it not been for the ability to do remote work, I wouldn't be able to live here. This is why I came. This is how I was able to come. And it's just one example of the way that you can enjoy work life. This may also mean that you want to stay close to family, but yet stay productive in the sector that you're in, whether that's software or whether that's sales or whether that's marketing or any other industry. You're able to do that remotely, allows the flexibility of staying close to those you love and close to the things that you love. And then ultimately, the other part is that when employers see that you have a healthy work-life balance, that you're enjoying life, that you are benefiting from the two things I just mentioned, you're more productive, you're more passionate, you're more driven, you're more excited to continue that because you enjoy the life. And so employers are seeing the value of this and investing heavily in it. Next is, again, a big important piece for employers, increased productivity. Again, I'll reference back to a few different organizations. Best Buy, a big tech industry retailer, British Telecom, Dow Chemical have all reported as much as 40% growth in productivity amongst their remote workers. They see a 40% better productivity rate out of their remote workers than they do out of those who transport to the office. So one reason that those companies are beginning to invest in more and more into remote. Businesses, again, studies have shown that businesses have lose somewhere close to $600 to $700 billion a year just in trying to offset the work-life balance piece in the workplace, meaning they're adding in services and providing transportation discounts, and they're investing in activities that offset that to the tune of 600 billion. So ways that companies begin to save dollars there. Another study that was done by Global Workplace Analytics shows that they have seen as much as 60% reduction in commuting, not only impacting the health of the environment, but also improving the productivity of those commute times, delays to meetings, delays to company times, traffic jams that cause those things. So productivity increases in that way as well. And then lastly, American Express is another global company that's working in lots of ways. They have between 20 and 25% more productive remote workers than their office workers. So just a few case studies of how productivity has impacted, and companies are beginning to been impacted, and companies are beginning to recognize the value of remote work in regards to productivity. Then reduce cost. So reduce cost of clearly I've hit on some of those things, but one of the big ones that is not considered in here is that when you go more dispersed workers, remote workers, you don't have to have the same real estate footprint for your offices. One of the largest costs to an organization, I can first attest, is operationally the physical structures that you're building, or the physical structures that you're renting. And so that overhead is a big part of why companies are seeing the value of dispersed work. Less expense in regards to real estate, more investment into other aspects of their business. It also reduces things like compliance. Anytime you have a building full of employees, there's lots of compliance and regulations that you must comply with that cost and increase the expenses for the employer. And then things I've already mentioned, things like parking and transportation, etc. The last piece is kind of harken back to this diversity, or the next piece I should say is harken back to this diversity piece, but expanded talent pool. This is more than just a diversity and inclusion piece, but really the ability to tap into individuals that are not able to access the business because of potential handicaps, potential geographic limitations, etc. You as an organization now have the ability to, once again, look at the talent pool of the globe, not just the talent pool of the local markets that you're serving. And so this allows you to begin to look for the best talent in ways that you haven't. I have a partner that's based out of Barbados, which down in the Caribbean islands, who's been looking for an instructor team to build up one of his programs. And with remote working, he's able to expand the search for that instructor and to markets around him and throughout the Caribbean. One example that I can give recently that has come up as a result of being a remote worker. The next, and a big one, again, I think no better time than to talk about this. Employers are excited about this because of the continuity of operations. What that means is that in times when things like a pandemic outbreak, a massive amount of sickness invades the company, you can actually stay more functional because you have already built the systems in place to be remote. It's not only helping to prevent the spread of something like a sickness, but it also helps to ensure your company can run and is planned to run in a way that remote work provides. And then last but not least is that there's tons of studies that show that this improves employee satisfaction and retention overall. Lots of studies, including one that I looked into recently through Hire and also through Inc.com, is that they are showing that employees are willing to take a 10% pay cut for the ability to work remote. So the reason that they're citing that 10% pay cut is because employees are so much more fixated on the satisfaction of their job than they are the increased income. So what that means to an employer is that if you're satisfied and you're enjoying your career, you're more likely to stay, even if a higher paying wage comes along. And so this is another reason that employers are investing in that. So next, moving through this topic is what's transforming how we work. It wasn't that long ago, as I mentioned, I mean, less than a decade ago, that when you were talking about remote work, that there were certain stigmas in lots of industries. Oh, remote work is not productive. It's not effective. Well, I've just gone through a lot of the ways that it is, of course, but it's thanks to a lot of technology that has come along that has made it possible for us to produce work that is productive. That not only productive, but connected. And this is one of the big pieces. So what are some of those? I want to just list 5 of them for the sake of time today that I think have really begun to shape and transform how we can do remote work. There are lots of others, but 5 that I have found to be the most valuable and probably the most forward progressing as we've moved into this new stage of life. So one is Slack. Slack is, if you've not used Slack, Slack is a communication tool that allows both internal and external communication with teams. It allows for a much more effective and efficient way to communicate with your teams across the globe. It is one of the tools that my company uses, and I know that Luminous uses, but it is a valuable tool that has really opened the doors. And it hasn't been on the scene very long, but as it's jumped into the scene, it has really transformed how remote workers are able to stay productive and be productive. Great aspects of this tool that have really made it effective is that you're able to set statuses. You're able to communicate in groups or individual chats. You're able to record and use additional features like integrations with G Suite, Zoom, etc. So it's a great tool that's really empowered that. Obviously, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Zoom. We're using it right now, and a great benefit to Zoom is what we're doing, the ability to present and engage and ask questions and see faces and interact. There is lots of studies that have gone into the ability to see someone's face is a powerful piece for retention and connectivity across organizations. And so face-to-face communication through video conferencing, that tool being one of my favorites, but there are lots of others out there that do the same thing. Zoom is definitely one of the powerful tools that have done that. Clearly, when we look at other tools, Asana, project management, keeping yourself organized, making sure that you're on top of your deliverables as a remote worker, both owning your own deliverables, but staying connected to your company's overall objectives and plans. Asana is one of the best tools that I found in project management. Again, there are other tools like this, Basecamp being one of them. There are lots of features in this tool that make it very powerful to be effective. You don't have to worry about staying on task. You have constant reminders. You have lots of integrations with dashboards and virtual connectivity. It really does empower the ability for the remote worker to stay productive, and more importantly, communicate with their team what is it that they're working on, and when do they expect the deliverable to be turned in. So great aspect of that. Remo is a new tool that I have really begun to enjoy. It's basically the ability to virtualize co-working and connectivity. It's a virtual platform that looks much like an office space that allows you to have rooms and breakouts, much like if we were in a physical building where we could go to rooms and connect with each other in private chats and private connections, or have conferences broadcasting to the organization. You're able to talk and effectively like you would in a building. It's essentially a virtual building, and it's quite effective in regards to things like classroom management, meeting management, etc. And then, of course, the big behemoth in this that's really made of impact in remote work is Google Suite. Google Suite has so many powerful tools that I won't go through all of them, but they have really advanced the ability to stay connected and stay in touch with your team, whether that's through just simple aspects of Gmail and Google Calendar, but our Drive and Docs, shared resources, the ability to drop in content or to work on programming code together through that. There are others, especially when you talk about the software industry, things like GitHub and LMS systems that allow for this that I think are very powerful too. But these are the 5 that I think have really begun to shape. And if you pay attention to what's happening in remote work, companies that embrace a lot of these forward-thinking technologies are some of the first to go to much more dispersed working. Okay, so what does this mean for you? How to be effective? And once again, I'll try to go through these quickly so that we stay on top, but want to make sure we hit these. So number 1, be responsive. If you are planning to be a remote worker, and clearly you are, 91% according to the poll that Luai just put out. So being responsive. One thing that you need to be very quick to is when you're asked or connected with that you are responsive. That doesn't mean you need to drop everything you're doing to respond to an email or jump into a Slack message or whatever the platform or tool you are using. It means you have to have clear communication. That when you are working, that you are using functionality like your status, your calendar is kept up to date, that you are being very clear and responsive to the things that need to be done, so that not only your employer knows what you are, that you're there and you're responding and you're connected, but so does your team, that they can count on you. Making sure that you have your autoresponders set, and you can do those in things like Gmail has autoresponders. So does Slack. So does a lot of different platforms that allow you to stay in touch and responsive. Next, always be transparent. I can't express this enough. As much as it's important to be responsive, being transparent, clarity and openness, transparent communication that builds trust. What that really means is, like, don't be afraid to communicate when things aren't going well. Don't be afraid to let someone on your team know or your employer know that you have hit a wall or that you have a special circumstances coming up. What the tendency that a lot of studies have found is that remote workers don't want to disclose that because they're fearful of what that might mean about their productivity. But in fact, the opposite has been true. The more transparent, the more clarity and openness you provide, the better it is in regards to your productivity and your ability to work remote. Of course, adopt a growth mindset. What I mean by that is never stop learning. Never stop learning. Many of you are going through school right now and learning a new trade, a new craft, but I can only say never stop learning. Constantly reading, constantly investing in new things, learning new technologies, learning new languages. You want to be the one leading the way, not following. And the more you're able to do that, the more you niche out a place for yourself as as an amazing employee, and most importantly, but a contributor that can allow companies to see the value of what you're contributing remotely. Staying agile and continuing to learn with skills that make you a more effective employee, of course, is a big part of growth mindset. Making it your goal to know the latest trends in the industry. And one of the biggest things that I would say to you is that if you are looking at a company, you should know that company better than the person that you're going to interview with. Know it well, research, study it, understand its ins and outs. So much is available through the power of the web and the Internet of Things. So make sure that you're doing all of the work to learn and acquire those skills as you begin to jump into the industry. Next, stay organized. It probably sounds like it should be a no-brainer, if you will, but staying organized requires, in particular, because you are working remotely and you're staying connected through services, the more you're organized, the more effective you're going to be, the more focused you're going to be on the times in the day. And when I say stay organized, it's even your personal time, making sure that you're calendaring in breaks for yourself, that you are calendaring in times for self-care, that your calendar is staying up to date, that it's transparent and visible to the rest of your organization so that they know when you're busy and when you're not. There are lots of settings that allow for different levels of access to your calendar. But using those to clearly communicate is ultra important. Being able to to prioritize your day is one of the biggest aspects of staying productive and effective as a remote employee. Learn which tools your company uses. I mentioned five remote tools that I think are powerful ones, but learn the tools your employers are using, your companies are using, and learn them well. So what are they using and how are they using them, and optimize all of the benefits of those tools. These tools have so many great aspects, from chat rooms to project management tools, etc. GitHub repos. Make sure you know them well. Next, develop a desire to collaborate. This one's probably big. One of the trends in remote work is that individuals that acquire a desire to go remote oftentimes have a mindset of working. I want to be my own pioneer. I want to lead my own way. I want to be the next superstar. And that is not the desire and the heartbeat of remote work. Remote workers need to be able to collaborate. It's not about you, it's about the team. And it's making sure that you're willing to collaborate, learn and grow and work together. Learning together, working together so that there's a better common good, but most ultimately so that you're a well-trusted, well-invested employee of that organization. Sharing what you're learning, reaching out when you need something, helping your colleagues when they need something. These are the things that are super important in this aspect. Over communicate. Again, what I mean by this is that it's way too easy for communication to be misconstrued, especially written communication. And when you're a virtual worker and you're sending a lot of information back and forth through communication tools, taking the time to read and think about what you wrote again, make a second attempt at looking at what you wrote, making sure that when you communicate that you're being over communicative of what you are working on and what you're doing and what your needs are. There's too much room for misunderstandings in written communication. So take the extra step to not just send off a fast message, but instead to think about it before you send. And then that goes into the last two pieces. Be humble and kind. This one is a study has shown that, like, the more humble employees are, meaning the more you're willing to take the position of learning and growing and never too big for the role that you have, but really you're always seeking to learn and to be someone who presents themselves in that way, they tend to succeed much faster than those who don't. And there's a lot of study going into that. Kindness, of course, plays into that the ability to help someone in need, the ability to reach across the phone or the technology to be a supportive teammate, even when you have your own deliverables. Not at dismissing your deliverables, but instead to be a team player and to help them when they're needed. It's a big one. Take time for self-care. Can't express this enough. It's something that I have worked into my own schedule. Throughout the day, I take many breaks that I need, whether that's a coffee break, whether that's a physical activity break. Every day, I at least get in 1 hour of activity, whether that's a run or a workout or some way to stay healthy and mentally alert, making sure you're taking that time of the day. Prioritizing my day based on those things and working my schedule around it. Decluttering your space is a good one, making sure that the space you're working in is as much distraction free as possible, having a dedicated space that you are effectively getting up and going to the office, right? That's what you want to think of, even if you're going from your bedroom into your living room, making sure that you have a dedicated space that's free of clutter and focused so that you can be focused and effective. And then find a hobby that you enjoy, whatever that hobby is, and exercise in that in the evenings and your off time. It's too easy to work around the clock when you're a remote worker, which is one of the ways that you can burn yourself out too in this role. Okay, next, who's hiring? The big question. I will be sure to share out with Luai about a lot of companies and a lot of access and tools that you can find around this topic. But there is, I just want to give you a few stats and a few different companies that I think will catch your attention in this space. But there was a study done by a company called Slash Data on this, and their statistics were that they were finding just take this one sector of software development. Software development is now beginning to, quote unquote, impact every industry in the world. Whether you're talking agriculture, retail, it does not matter, medical, technology is invading all of those industries. There are more than 18.9 million software developers in the world as of 2019. So 18.9 million. The studies that they have been pulling together show that by the year 2030, that number will reach close to 45 million. Now, some of you may be thinking, I don't want to be a software developer. Some of you may be thinking about other careers. I myself am not a software developer, even though I run a software company. There are lots of roles that require the education of software development, understanding it. My role is one of those, understanding it in a way that if you're in sales or in marketing, you're in business development, knowing those skills is going to become much more important into the future. And companies are showing that as well. So the growth in this industry is quite significant. And one of the reasons that they're seeing so much of this growth is because employers are looking for more remote work. So who is hiring? These are just a few. ADP, BCD Travel, lots of opportunities in that organization. Appen is an Australian-based company that's one of the largest employers for remote workers. Zapier, another technology company that does a lot of connectivity using integrations with different services that hires tons. Amazon, Expedia, Google, Microsoft, American Express, AHA is one of these new up-and-coming startups that launched and has been growing quite aggressively, mostly through remote work. And Facebook. These are all just a sampling of companies, but as I mentioned, there are hundreds and hundreds of companies looking for remote workers. There are lots of services like Stack Overflow, Dribble Jobs, Flex Jobs. We Work Remotely is another one. Power to Fly, Remote OK. Again, I will make sure that these are out there for those interested in remote work, so you begin to see what the job descriptions look like and what the roles look like. But virtually every sector, no matter whether you're going into business development, sales, software engineering, there are tons and tons of jobs out there globally, not just here in the United States or Europe, but literally in markets around the globe, looking for more and more remote workers. And I think that this is going to be the future. And so as we consider the different ways that we can be effective in this market, these are some great tools to look at. So I'll make sure you have them. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation, and I'll turn it back over to Luai and answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Mitch, for the very comprehensive and informative talk and presentation. Actually, myself got a lot of tips and tricks and reassuring that we follow some of the basics and the things that make us more productive. We felt basically remote working is something that we know eventually it will be part of our work, but we didn't expect that the future will become a present in no time. And that takes me to a couple of, before we start taking questions. So I want to ask everyone, if you have any question, please refer to the Q&A section and write your question. So we have already a couple of questions that we'll go through. But before that, Mitch, I want to ask you, will remote work pick up, or is it just basically because of COVID-19, or is it like a trend that people will go back to normal? Because there's an interesting quote by, I think his name is Peter Drucker. He says, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast at any time." So which is an interesting thought, because regardless of how many people think about digital transformation and things, but still the culture is not ready. I feel a lot of people were put in this situation because they have to keep working. But do you believe, from all of what you just presented and the things that you're already facing in the US, will this become the new norm, or will it get back?
Yeah, Luai, it's a great question. I think that my opinion on this topic, and just through the data, I mean, really we've seen remote working start to grow since 2005. 2005, they started to see a growth in remote working. Largely in those days, it was mostly in roles like customer service and IT support. But as the time has gone on, we've seen a trend of growth. As I mentioned in one of my slides, 151% growth in remote working already. I think the pandemic, COVID-19, has really caught a lot of companies off guard. If you've been studying any of the impacts financially to organizations across the globe, those who weren't prepared for this time and weren't able to shift remote are dealing with massive losses, including there's a site that I'm, again, happy to share that shows globally all of the different companies doing layoffs as a result of not being able to functionally operate. Most of those tend to be in sectors that were not prepared So my experience and all the studies I say, I think this growth trend is going to actually grow much more rapid than a lot of the predictions coming into this pandemic. Even if we figure a way to solve COVID-19 and it becomes a non-issue in our future, being prepared for this and finding ways to stay productive in times are clearly something that's needed. And more importantly, there's been a push through lots of organizations and lots of movements and lots of political leaders on the globalization of our economies, right? The quote unquote phrase of one world economy. We don't need to get into politics of that and debate whether that's something that's going to happen, but there's a lot of organizations that have a massive desire for that. And so those factors are really pushing the envelope of more and more remote work, I do believe. I think that the studies around 50% of us being in some form or fashion working remote by 2028 are probably conservative, if I'm guessing.
Interesting. Thank you so much. So we'll move to the questions. Maybe we can start with, I think we have a question, an anonymous attendee. It's really hard to have work-life balance in the normal situation, but working remotely will make it harder to separate your work from your life. Tell us a useful and effective advice to get this balance.
It's a great question. I've been working remotely for a long time. I've been working professionally for 25 years now, and I would say more than 20 of those years I've been in some form or fashion a remote worker. I've worked in that capacity, and it is way easy. I agree with this person. It is way too easy to let your work overtake your life, and so you have to set up lots of things to make sure that isn't happening. One of the ones that I've said is this topic of self-care. I make it a priority, and I could share my own calendar, but I make it a priority to live by my calendar, number one. I focus on it. I try not to do any one thing for more than an hour. Hour is usually my max, and then I go on to something new. Even in the times of heavy deliverables, and this becomes really, really important. Today's a good example. I have no shortage of 7 other projects that I'm working on, all of which can give me great anxiety because I know they need to be done yesterday, not today. But I'm also realizing that, like, hey, if I don't take care of myself, then I'm not going to be a productive employee into the future. And so setting a good calendar, working in, I mentioned this work-life balance, or these, self-care pieces. 2 times a day minimal. I take a break and I get outside if I can. Right now that's difficult, but instead I'm doing inside exercises and workouts. I'm enjoying some music. I'm taking just a break or a debrief from that. Whatever your hobby is, if you like to make things, if you like to play music, if you like to do workouts, like I can't express enough how important it is to make that as much a priority as it is the production of the work you're doing. It will benefit the companies. And again, this isn't just my words. Lots of studies have gone into the more you can balance your day, the more you can control your schedule, not let your schedule control you, the better you will be as an employee. The more productive you'll be for the organization that you work for. And so that'd be if there's a major topic, that would be that. Also, I would say there is so much software. I only listed 5 softwares that really helped you be a remote worker. There are literally hundreds, if not thousands of tools out there. Learning which ones work for you and the organization you work for is critical. It's too easy to be overwhelmed by that. This part I said it as well, is setting statuses. Like right now I'm on this call, I have my calendar set to busy so that people know I'm busy. I have my Slack notifications turned off, and that my Slack notification says that I'm not responsive right now. I have all of the different settings across those platforms, and I follow that rule very emphatically so that I can stay productive and I cannot be overwhelmed by things. So that would be 2 things for you.
That's amazing, and actually I like the I'm gonna use it as a quote from now on, like live by your calendar. I think especially important now for remote working to be very well organized. And actually, to be frank, just one of the greatest things of having you as an education partner, it learned us actually to prepare us when we had the manuals and the SOPs, because usually we interact with multiple education partners, but you need a lot of back and forth communication in order to achieve something. But having, if anything, we looked at, like, if we're going to use anything twice, it should be documented. And by creating the manuals, the standard operating procedures, it enables us to be organized, to make sure that we follow these, that we abide by these rules, and make sure that everyone basically follow, from students to instructors to team members. And actually, one of the great things that I want to say is also our students today is experiencing part of working remotely, even with the remote education part. It's actually, we're an education for employment institution, so we're actually preparing you from the beginning, from day one, to enter the job market. We're simulating the environment. But now, because we're so focused on being an in-person academy, the human element, and now during the COVID time, there's actually an interesting question about this. So Randa is asking, do you think remote teaching will be as successful as the in-class teaching, and will it affect the quality of students graduating in terms of soft skills?
Well, my experience is, I mean, I would echo, so this topic of teaching in particular, Code Fellows, myself being one of the founders of the organization, had long held a strong stance on immersive in-person education. That in order to do education well, to where you're not only learning a new skill, but you're learning to be a great learner, we need it to be in person. And this is one of the things that I am happy to be wrong on. When I look at what's happened in the shift due to COVID-19 for our organization, we have adopted tools that we just did not know were there. Which is sad to say that there's so much happening, so much innovation. And today's economy, where the innovation around virtual connectivity has really excelled, it is really changing the way that. So two things. One is, I think that, do I think virtual education will be as good or replace in person? I don't know that it will ever replace in person, but I can say that right now I'm experiencing things that we are seeing the benefit of virtual over in person. And some examples of that being, right now, as I'm talking to you, you can see my face up close on your screen. If we're in a meeting room or I'm lecturing to you in a class, you are, depending on where you're sitting, you have different visibility to me. We're right together. If we're learning software engineering, I can share my screen with you. It's right in front of you, not on a projected wall or a TV in front of you. So much more interactivity in that sense. When I look at how we can work together through team working, there's a lot more functionalities, including this one I mentioned, Remo, that allow the teams to work and integrate in ways that they're quicker to ask for help. They're quicker to reach out and connect with one another than in person. So in some ways, virtual has been better than in person for us in our space. And I think that, will it be more effective? I would say if companies adopt, like we have adopted and like Loomis has adopted, the technologies that exist to allow that, and the student takes the time to be disciplined and not be distracted, and find some of the resources that we're talking about in investing in the learning process through connecting with their team, not being an isolationist, making sure they have dedicated space, staying focused. I think that virtual learning is definitely something of the future.
Thank you so much. And even I want to validate that and just give some great news for our students and the people with us. And even I haven't even told you that yet, Mitch, that we experienced the whole virtual transformation back, I think, more than a month. It's around 40 days now. And we've done from student acquisition to doing filtration and accepting students, to taking classes, to graduating students, all it virtually. And 2 days ago, because we had the 401 people already start graduating, we received that 2 of the graduates got a job offer at an artificial intelligence company starting on Sunday.
That's great.
So 2 were ready. Yeah. So the things that we started, a whole the idea, the theories, now it's being validated, and even validated in such a very hard time that remote working does exist. People are getting job offers. They're starting on Sunday from Tafila. Some of them in Tafila, the other in Amman, and they're working at an artificial intelligence company. So people who already were from Tafila being unemployed with the different degrees. Now, after 6 months from our program, they are software engineers at one of the best artificial intelligence companies in Jordan called Arabot. They do like chatbots and AI for communication.
That's amazing.
So the first 2 hiring, more people are being in interviews, different companies. So it's already changing the norm. This is the new norm, I believe. Frankly, I asked you that question, but I think it will pick up more and more by validating such kind of things. So if people start hiring and employing remotely, that means it's becoming slowly part of the culture. So just to make sure that all of us, at even the simulating the environment, I think the human element is so important, but we have to adapt regardless of the situation. We are dynamic. That's one of the main things that I think how we'll be able to scale all of this. So it's just great news for us to know that
Yeah,
it's working already.
To echo, Loab, just to echo, we are seeing the same thing. If you're in the technology sector, we use something called a Net Promoter Score to measure the effectiveness of how the learning environment's going. And our Net Promoter Score has been as high as it ever has been. We're in the 85 range on a weekly basis from a student's perspective, and we're seeing students get hired. And I just want to do one final caveat on this. There are lots of options for online education. I would say not all online education is the same.
Yeah,
asynchronous, which is when you're watching videos, not live instruction, has proven not to work that effectively. Not having accountable peer set where you're working in teams and connected and through your classmates is also one of the major ways that they can fail. You being a connected part of a team, having a high student to teacher ratio, those are things that are invaluable in regards to online education, in my opinion.
Make total sense. We'll take more questions. Do you think with the remote working lifestyle taking over, people's social skills and interactions will be negatively affected? We talked a little bit about that, but I don't know if will it be negatively affected? Do you think there will be a negative aspect to it?
I mean, the interesting part of social skills, so again, partly my opinion, partly fact here, partly data. So my opinion on this is that technology has long been impacting our social skills, right? Like social media is on this birth and horizon where people are using it more and more as ways to connect. In fact, I have two young sons who are in their teenagers who it's a push to get them off social, right? And connect in person. So I think that technology can impact social activity in a way that it requires you to be more thoughtful. So the answer to that question from a data-driven standpoint is that, yes, it definitely can impact social connectivity from lots of the studies out there, but it is all dependent on your behaviors, right? Just because you're a remote worker doesn't mean that you can't still do social activities. And so making sure that you're integrating, this is back to that self-care piece that I'm talking about. So right now we're all sort of in this forced time where we are not allowed to do much social interaction physically. But as that time changes, making a priority to get out. Again, both myself and my wife work remote. And one of the things that we do quite frequently when we're doing that is to make a point to connect with people and to get out and to make sure that we're doing our parts, whether that's in a market where we're traveling to, or whether that's at home. And so I think the idea is that remote work means you're in a room by yourself all day long. And that's just not remote work. Again, my experience in remote work has not been that way. I connect with, I see more people, talk to more people in a given day than I ever have through the power of technology. And also in meetings and connected in that fashion as well. So I think it can be, but I think it really is the same as always. You have to be the one that owns that. It's not a system or tool that's going to fix that, nor hurt it, as long as you have the right processes in place for yourself.
Very good answer. And we'll take a couple of more questions, I think, because of the time. So what are the best ways to increase the interactions in virtual classes, especially with persons who try not to interact? I don't know if I get this. Let me look at it again. What are the best way to increase the interactions in virtual classes? I think this is basically, if you can look at it from that perspective. So, because, you know, the 9 to 5 structure that we have simulating the work structure, but also we have theoretical classes with the instructor and then lab hours. So they want to, I think during the in-person experience, it's different because they can interact, but virtually, how can they increase and make it better?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we have done in this way is to produce individual rooms that have dedicated TA oversight. So TAs aren't necessarily in the chats with the teams, but they're able to monitor it through this platform I was mentioning called Remo. So you're actually able to see the activity and that people are engaging. I would say as a student, raising the flag that you have a classmate that's not not participating and not working together is always a good way to get the instructional team to support. But ultimately, utilizing the tools, we have found these breakout separation rooms, both in the Zoom platform, which we use as well. Remo is more of the classroom environment and the lab time, so that the instructional team can see the entire classroom as if you're staring out into a room and seeing people work in groups. You see that on your screen. And it's quite powerful, and it's quite good to make sure interaction is happening. So yeah, I would say make sure you raise the flag without feeling like you're trying to get someone in trouble, but you're just raising like, hey, I need more participation, getting your instructional team to help support you. And then ultimately just reaching out and saying, hey, listen, I need more interaction from you. And I'm looking to work on this project together, but it takes collaboration. It's back to that same thing. Being transparent and open in your communication is going to be critical.
Perfect. Okay. Yes, this is interesting. We'll take a couple more questions. So we have a question that just pops up from Ammar Badwan. He is asking, what about the security aspect of remote online work? With all the hackers online, will it affect the normal work? Especially, we heard about the Zoom bombing, but the proactive reaction for that from Zoom itself, that they made the security better. But what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this is a great, valid question, which is why there's a lot, again, back to how technology is empowering remote work. I'm happy to share that resource too. There's a lot of new technologies that are coming up around how to protect yourself remotely, in particular to your own server networks, your own connectivity. There's software applications that can protect against these things, against attacks and against these virtual aspects of it. But it's going to be something that I think is going to be a growing and burgeoning sector of virtual activity. It's already becoming, even for companies. Dispersed work is not new in just remote workers. You know, you have organizations that are quite large, like an Amazon, who literally has offices around the globe. And as they are trying to protect themselves, obviously a much bigger organization, they have been pushing along this technology. But that's now beginning to bleed down into lots of growth in the technology sectors for remote workers to protect their accessibility and to ensure that things like hacks are not happening. It's also why cybersecurity is a growing industry. Cybersecurity has long been a growing industry. It's why we ourselves are working on a curriculum to train more and more cybersecurity folks. And so yeah, I think it can be, but I think there's tools that help to protect it.
Perfect. With that, so thank you so much, Mitch. This was a very, very inspiring and informative session. I really thank you for making the time again for this. It's like now I think 7 a.m. at morning with good coffee. We're ending up our day now in Jordan, and we're starting Ramadan tomorrow. So Ramadan Kareem for all of one and for you as well. Tomorrow is start of the holy month, also virtually. We're experiencing the first time to do Ramadan virtually. So with that, just a kind reminder for everyone, adopt a growth mindset, over communicate, stay organized, and focus on yourself and your health as well, and live by your calendar, which I think this is my new favorite quote for this week. Mitch, again, thank you so much. And everyone will be sending you now just a survey. We appreciate your feedback on it, and looking forward to having you again, and hopefully in Amman again in our campus to give a live session for our audience.
Can't wait.
Thank you so much again. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.